All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to US History. Today we are going to start in with some of our book content. This is from Chapter 3, Section 1.4. All right, so Chapter 3, Section 1.4 specifically deals with conflicts with Native Americans. So we know that it can be very difficult to keep the peace when something that belongs with you is taken away. This is what Native Americans in the 1600s faced when colonists began to take over their ancestral lands. The main idea for this section is going to be that wars between Native Americans and Virginian colonists raged on and off for decades as each group laid claim to the land. We're specifically going to look at wars with the Powhatan, a treaty that was formed with the Powhatan, and then Bacon's Rebellion. So if you recall back at the end of our last lesson, we talked a little bit about the marriage of John Rolfe and Pocahontas. So for about 8 years after they were married, the Jamestown colonists and the Powhatan lived in peace. During that time, the Powhatan helped the colonists to plant corn, catch fish, and capture wild fowl. But as thousands of new colonists arrived to work for the Virginia Company, the company that was in charge of settling Jamestown, the Powhatan saw their land and culture taken away. In 1622, one Powhatan leader staged a rebellion against the English and their European and Christian customs. Colonists killed him, and the Powhatan responded by launching an attack on the colony, which then killed hundreds of settlers. This attack set off a 10-year war. So peace finally came, again, after the end of that 10-year war, and it lasted for more than a decade. But even during the peaceful years, the colonists' desire for land continued to provoke the Powhatan. It's kind of like they kind of continued to poke the bear. As the demand for tobacco as a cash crop increased, colonists who claimed that the English king owned the colony and all of the land simply grabbed the land. They claimed the land that they deemed that they thought was unoccupied. Although no one lived on the land, the Powhatan still used it frequently for hunting, fishing, and they also farmed on it. So 2 years later, the Powhatan attacked the colony again, triggering another war. In 1646, the Powhatan surrendered, and then their leader was captured and later killed. So the two groups signed a treaty that was pretty unfair to the Powhatan. It required the Powhatan to move and live on lands north of the York River, which made them give up a lot of the land that they had inhabited for centuries. They also had to make a yearly payment to the colonists of 20 beaver skins. This ultimately led to the Powhatan losing all of their power in Jamestown. So as the years passed, conflicts between Native Americans and colonists just continued to increase. So in the 1660s, the governor of Virginia, named William Berkeley, urged colonists to interact peacefully and maintain trading with Native Americans to avoid a costly war. Yet another costly war. However, by 1670, tension surfaced among colonists who owned land and those who did not. Landless freemen, so the term freeman is going to be important here because if you guys remember back to our last section, we talked about indentured servants. These are people who made a contract to work for for a company for a certain number of years, and then whenever they were done with their contract, they would be given a sum of money. Originally, they were given land. By this point, they weren't really given land. All of them were not given the land. So, landless freemen, so not indentured servants, these are landless freemen. They resented their lack of property and they wanted a stronger voice in Virginia's government. Many of them had the right to purchase land, but low tobacco prices and high land prices made it difficult for them to find land that they could afford to buy. They also claimed that the Powhatan controlled too much land, even though the land had been granted to the Native Americans by the 1646 treaty. The piece about wanting a stronger voice in Virginia's government is important because if you remember, most of the people who had the right to vote and make decisions in government were landowners, so white male landowners. So even if they were white men who were not an indentured servant, if they didn't own land, they couldn't vote or have a voice in the government. So at this point, a man named Nathaniel Bacon, who was a young councilman and wealthy planter, challenged Berkeley's leadership. Fun fact, he was actually Berkeley's cousin by marriage. So, fun family dinners there. He argued that the governor held too much power and that the colonists should be more involved with the government. He also wanted to claim more land from the Powhatan. Bacon and a group of landless followers attacked Native Americans in 1676 in an attempted revolution that was later called Bacon's Rebellion. This failed. Bacon's rebellion failed, and Berkeley accused Bacon of being a traitor, someone disloyal to his or her own people or cause, because he believed that Bacon had challenged the power of the governor and his fellow wealthy planters. Bacon had growing public support, though, so there wasn't too much that Berkeley was able to do to directly punish him in the colonies. With that public support, Berkeley agreed to be lenient with Bacon if Bacon turned himself in and went to England to be tried before King Charles II. But the House of Burgesses, which was like the governing body in the colonies, did not approve of that leniency. They forced Bacon to apologize to Berkeley. That power struggle between Bacon and Berkeley continued for several months. In fact, in September of 1676, Bacon and his army burned Jamestown to the ground. All right, Louis here to say hi. No, you're supposed to look at the camera. Look at the camera. There you go. There he is. Kind of. Okay, so to wrap up this section, things to remember: tensions were continuously high between the colonists and Native Americans. Right, Louis? Right? There it is. And Bacon's rebellion was one sign of the tension that existed between the colonists and the Native Americans during this time. All right, Louis says, thanks for listening, and check Canvas to see what your next job is. Bye.